Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special in-person episode of Matt Chat. We are made possible by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and sponsored by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your USA Wrestling branded gear. My guests today are from Arizona State and the Sunkist Kids, coaches Zeke Jones, Lee Pritts, and Frank Molinaro. First of all, you guys, thanks for coming on and let me do this live with you guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
So, Zeke, let me start with you. You guys went from your season being canceled 14 months ago to placing fourth 1 month ago and bringing a team trophy back to Tempe. When you think about, we talked off camera, it's been a 7-year journey, but when you just kind of think about that 14-month block and some of the stuff that happened right like in February of last year to where you are now, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a range of emotions, right? I mean, at first it's, finishing the Pac-12 championships, and the next week we're not going to the NC tournament with COVID, and that was a big blow. That was a #1 recruiting class. It was all seniors. We're excited about going to the NCAA tournament, and that got taken away and never given back to them again. So that one hurt. We were also in the midst of coaching changes. That's when we were able to bring Frank and Mark in. It was a new beginning for us, I think, a reset button with the recruiting class graduating that, Zahid, Anthony, Tanner, Shields, Maruka, that really jump-started the program, 5-6 years ago. And, fast forward through bringing the staff on, I'd say probably the one takeaway that's the biggest is what Frank brought to the table, and that was just being grateful for the opportunity. We talked a lot over the summer about we're very fortunate just to get to wrestle. Most people aren't wrestling right now. And so we were blessed, right? We were blessed with the opportunity to wrestle. And that through the summer propelled us into a really good mindset. I think we started the wrestling season off just really happy to be there. I mean, we kind of figured it out, on trying to work out because we couldn't work out at ASU at first. So we went up to Fight Ready where Henry trains, Cejudo trains, and we started there before we could get back into ASU. And obviously to fast forward through a season with a COVID stuck in the middle and being medevaced home myself.
Yeah.
On a trip to going to the Pac-12, going to the NCAA tournament, having a finish that we could be proud of. And, it goes back to what Frank said, which is just being grateful for the opportunity. And it was a lot of fun. And my boss would say, Don Bakke, would say we did our best coaching. We did our best coaching because we had so many obstacles.
Yeah, I can only imagine, I got a chance to interview Shane Griffith, who obviously won it when the walls are falling down around him and at a program and in a state where probably is the most restrictive in the country. Frank, Zeke mentioned the idea of gratitude, and obviously I know where you came from, that's preached there a lot. I think everybody knows, hey, be thankful for what you have, but if it stuck out to him, how do you guys convey that to your athletes so that they get over frankly, this sucks, this is terrible? How do you help those guys look at it from a whole lens or a whole different perspective?
Right. I think the first step is probably just living it, and being it and embodying it and looking for obstacles and adversity and, showing them that you can be grateful and, redirecting constantly because, everybody is grateful, we're all grateful, but it's definitely something you have to do constantly. It's a muscle that you have to exercise frequently. And I think eventually though, when you can approach life and especially wrestling with an attitude of gratitude, it just makes it a lot more lighthearted, and the second you stop enjoying wrestling, the guys know it gets a lot harder. So, they were extremely grateful all season, and they had to do rigorous testing, probably more testing than anyone did in the entire country. And they kept that gratitude. They kept the gratitude through all the way up to the NCAA tournament. I think we had a really tough round. It's like session 3, part B. And to see how our guys responded, even the guys in the wrestlebacks, they were grateful. They competed with enthusiasm, and in a situation where your back's against the wall, I think gratitude is the key because it's really the remedy to everything. You can take any situation and you can take a positive from it or a negative from it, and that's what gratitude does. If you just sprinkle gratitude on it, you can change the way you look at it, and it changes the way you feel, and it changes the outcome. So we're just going to keep pumping gratitude, but these guys, they are the ones doing the work. It's not me preaching gratitude. They're the ones that are out there trying hard, you know. And
Sure.
they tried hard all year, and that was what I was most impressed with. Was just, you know, we never really had to coach them up to compete hard.
When you guys chased competition this year, and you kind of have to with your conference, and a couple of those meets got canceled, I know, because of COVID, but, you know, you guys are sort of go anywhere. We'll wrestle anybody, anytime, any place, anywhere, for sure. So, Lee, you know, I bug you all the time about all the different stuff, but I think most people that know anything about wrestling know, A, how important recruiting is to a successful program, and B, how much passion and expertise you put into it. I remember when Zeke was coming on, you were the only guy left at Arizona State and kind of literally holding down the fort. And then when he came on here, here's where we are with these recruits. You know, let's close them together, that sort of thing. You know, you guys had a lot of guys pan out this year. You know, and if you're good at recruiting, they still don't always pan out. That's the development and the other stuff, and maybe they're just good at hiding it, and that's how they get their scholarship money, and then you figure out the bad stuff later. You know, what did you see in the guys that AA'd this year that led you to recruit them, and how did some of them either meet or exceed your expectations?
Well, I think when it comes to recruiting, when I go to a tournament or something, you kind of have your targets, right? You know who's good. And you have your targets and you go there, but I'm not necessarily watching their wrestling. I've already studied their wrestling probably. You know, and when I say I, all of us do, right? It's our entire staff and kick it around like who we want. But when I go to the tournament, I like to see their approach, you know, and see the kids that love to compete. You know, you see a Brandon Courtney or a Team or Colton Schultz, you know, these guys just love to compete. You know, and that's what I look for is, you know, no matter if they won or they lost that match. You know, I've seen a lot of these guys lose a match and see how they respond to that and how they, you know, what they do the next round. And they're competitors, you know, and, you know, we talked about Teamer. And you were like, man, I was surprised that he came back the way he did in the wrestlebacks. I
want that to frame that the right way. He's been so good for so long and hasn't had to be on the backside. Right. And just when you coach, we coach some guys like that in junior college, and it's the magical mystery ride, and you don't want to put them there. In junior college, it's easier. You just put them in a real good open tournament, and then you see how they perform. Like, if you guys are really good, you're the bad draw in the open tournament. You know, so...
Right.
And there were no open tournaments this year, obviously. Like, getting a double duel was hard, you know?
Right. And the reason I was saying that was 6 weeks out, I started talking to him just saying, hey, it's championship season. You know, you got to remember, he won 5 state titles. He got a bronze medal at the World Cadet Worlds. And, you know, so he's had success, high school national. I don't know how many high school national titles he's won and how many flow national, you know, Fargo's. And so he's been winning, and I just said, hey, it's championship season. And, you know, he started 6 weeks. How many weeks? We got 6 weeks? Oh, I'll be ready. You know, and then all of a sudden you see his weight dialed in and his work ethic's dialed in and everything's dialed in. It's championship season. So he kind of mentioned it that the guys rallied together and they competed hard. We didn't have to work hard to get them to compete hard. You know, and that's what we recruited. We recruited guys that love to compete.
Yeah. And I remember, and I won't name him, but you told me about a kid coming out of high school that was like elite, and you said, I don't think he's going to do well in college. And I said, why? And you go, if you move his headgear 2 feet away from where it's supposed to be, he melts down. You know, because most people are just like, well, he's winning. He's probably, if he won here, he's probably going to be good here. And again, we won't name him, but you were right. We'll just say that, you were right. So, you know, Frank, you're the new guy on the staff, obviously not new to coaching or mentoring, but new here at Arizona State. What's it been like officially as a Division I coach? And what's it been like having, you know, these guys and Mark Perry around to kind of, you know, not that you need it, but as the youngest guy, as a mentors?
Oh, man, it was a blessing, you know, especially coming to the end of something and starting something new. You know, I really wanted to be in a good position where I could transition smoothly and learn. And, you know, that's really been the biggest thing for me is just seeing a different method, you know, and just seeing how, you know, Lee and Zeke and Mark execute, and, you know, they're all coming from different experience, and I've been able to learn a ton, you know, and this guy's been coaching for 30, almost 25 years or something. And
he's just going to put his age out there on the street. All right. We're just going to put it out there.
23 years. 23 years coaching.
Hey, he's married, so he's good.
Yeah,
we're okay.
But, you know, my point is, he knows how to do everything. You know, he knows how to do everything from recruiting to winning to, hey, this guy's got this problem or this guy. He's seen all the scenarios, And, the biggest thing, Coach Zeke's been really good with the communication. He's been real good with the leadership. He's really good at coming up with a plan and carrying out the plan. And, for me, it's a really good system for me because I really like planning. I really like the details. And, most importantly, though, I think we've got a great energy. I've been a lot of different places, and I think you can win a lot of different ways, but, we have a lot of positivity. And I think it goes a long way, because these kids are high-level athletes. They are elite. These guys have elite level talent, and they do a good job of managing the guys here, but I'm just really excited to be able to learn and to be in a position where we can win at the highest level, because that's the other thing too. I wanted to be in a position with a coaching staff, that wanted to win national titles, and these guys are probably, more hungry than I am to win a national title right now, and I love that.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you're a product of your environment, and if you surround yourself with high achievers who are passionate and obsessive with the craft of wrestling, it's going to be great for me and great for my family and kids. So we're excited.
Well, it was interesting because I had you on when you went to the OKRTC.
Yep.
And then I had you on when you were announced that you were coming here.
Yeah.
And then I think I had you on when you announced your retirement. And then you went Sugar Ray Leonard on us and came out. And I had a buddy say, they go, Frank's wrestling. I go, I saw him at Nationals. I go, that dude's got hollow bones or something if he's down there. So, I always thought, though, like you regret the decisions you make in life that you didn't take a shot at more than if you tried and didn't necessarily succeed. And so I'm guessing that's part of the mentality. But I've always thought wrestling is a selfish sport. Like to be great, you have to be selfish. And people don't want to say that out loud, but, like I had a brother, whether he won or lost, I had to go win, and if he won, that helped. If he lost, you can't think about him. You got to go do your thing. So how did you balance and I think coaching is the ultimate unselfish act, right? Like you stay late, you do one-on-ones, you watch film, you call your guy at 10 o'clock to make sure he's okay that his girlfriend broke up with him, whatever the case may be. How did you balance out the unselfish part of that with the selfish part of competing?
I mean, really just tried to make good use of my downtime, when in between workouts or in between practice on the weekends, just work out all day, really. I mean, even if I wasn't
Like, do you even lift, bro?
I was gonna start laughing. I was like, we were joking, but we weren't joking. We had more minutes, more live wrestling minutes in his body than anyone. Because he was wrestling with the RTC in the morning, then he'd come and wrestle with the college guys in the afternoon. Sometimes do an individual in there with someone, lift weights, cardio, swim. I mean, I was amazed.
He worked out all day.
All day, literally.
I did the ASU periodization and training plan from the day I got here. I pretty much did every workout. And that was, for me, it was just so I could see how it works, see how I feel, see the different progressions, the different cycles that we went through. So, all of a sudden I did all that training, and then I'm going over to Sunkist, and I felt like, I could still wrestle. But the real reason was I qualified the spot, and it was hard to qualify it.
Yeah.
I was bouncing around, like living in 1,000 square feet, training. It was chaotic, but I didn't want to retire.
Well, we can't all live like Pritts, right?
You can if you come to ASU.
Pretty much all of us.
But I just
Don't
didn't-
forget it. Everybody out there.
That's right.
No, it's good. I just didn't want to retire, in my garage over COVID, and I would have regretted not wrestling. And like you said before, it's like that's the only pain that doesn't go away is regret, and
The shot you didn't shoot.
And I'm not scared.
Yeah.
I've lost. Man, I'll tell you a quick story. My parents brought me this box, and it was like all these kids' trophies. I'm like, Mom, I want all my kids' trophies, just to show the kids. And I'm going through all these trophies: 4th place at the Wall Classic, 6th place.
3rd.
And in my mind, I imagined I won all these tournaments. I thought I never lost during these years.
The older we get, the better we were, Frank.
2 seconds later, my kids are breaking the trophies, throwing them on the wall, and I was just cracking up laughing. Like, it's not about winning or losing for me. It's like I legitimately just love competing, like these guys. I love to
That's
compete.
awesome.
It's sad that I won't be able to compete like anymore in the future, but heck, we're gonna do a lot of winning, so that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it's
Vicky,
awesome.
Victoria Anthony posted posted a picture on Instagram, and she was like on her knees and bent over, like just on
Yeah.
her knees, laying down, and she said about from a picture, it's hard to tell if somebody won or lost, and this was a match she just won.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I responded to her saying, we're fortunate to be able to feel both. Not everyone gets to feel both.
I think when you go hard, whether that those extreme emotions you feel you live, like you actually live and you feel either, like you said, the thrill of victory, agony of defeat. That's more than most people just walking around doing a 9-to-5 job ever get to feel.
Right.
And those people go, I don't want to feel that pain. Like, yeah, because you don't want to do the sacrifice to maybe succeed, but you might fail. So, Zeke, one of the things, the story goes that either you were the influence or one of the major influences in the developments of RTCs here in the United States. And that the RTCs are modeled after the Russian system. And I've heard different pieces of this, but I figured I got you on camera. How did that, what's the story behind that? And, because I think, because RTCs are so impactful now on every aspect of wrestling, from youth to the collegiate system, obviously, who are putting on world teams.
Yeah, I think when I got to USA Wrestling, the feeling I had was the goal was to bring all the best wrestlers to Colorado Springs, live there, and train as a national team. And we watched that didn't work.
Yeah.
College coaches didn't want their best guys to leave their system. It was adversarial, that created tension between the national coach and head coaches in college. And I said, instead of fighting it, why don't we join it? And I thought it was pretty low-hanging fruit. Why have one Olympic training center when you can have 7 of them? So I went to the head coaches of the prominent programs and said, hey, I'm not going to try to bring your guy here. But what I want in return, what I ask you to do is do it like we would do it here, you do it there. So what do you need to have in a successful freestyle program at Ohio State, Penn State, Oklahoma State, Iowa at the time, Arizona State? And what do you need? Do you need a coach? Do you need an athlete for your best guy, a partner, a training partner? So we basically just try to customize each site and what they needed. What also created, it happened beautifully, and I knew it would, was competition was created. And Penn State immediately jumped on it because Cale knew the model. Cale wrestled for Bobby Douglas, I wrestled for Bobby Douglas. And Bobby really, along with Dan Gable, created these, they called them wrestling clubs. But I just rebranded the name Regional Training Center because it was in the rule book, and we had more room to maneuver with the term regional training centers with it as it related to the NCAA and the United States Olympic Committee. So Penn State put a lot of energy right into theirs, and that got Tom Ryan fired up. It really didn't get Tom fired up. I should take that back. Tommy Rowlands got fired up, and he said, we're going to do it. So that's when they went out and got J.D. J.D. was there, right, and Reese. They brought in Keith Gavin. They brought in Tervel Delagnev. And then that's when, and Bunch, and then that's when the competition between those two RTCs started. And then it was like wildfire. Those schools created the model that had already really been done by Bobby and Gable back in the 70s, 80s. And we had more of them. That started it. And then I think most college coaches, because I don't do freestyle, I can't have an RTC. Well, they realize you don't necessarily need coaching, you need money. If you have money, you can start an RTC.
That's kind of true in life.
Right, pretty much anything.
Yeah, like you got money, the rest will work itself out, yeah.
And what those coaches that had no freestyle experience said, if I come up with some money,
I can go get a freestyle.
Something like it.
Yeah.
Or even a good one, right? What happened inherently was I estimated at the time I was coaching the national team, we had added about $7 or $8 million new dollars into wrestling at the elite world class level, between coaches and training partners and keeping guys around, and it just grew from there. And I think it built the pipeline. It built, at the apex of the pyramid got better. We just had more people doing more freestyle. And I always knew it would bite me in the ass at some point because I'd be coming back to college wrestling. And now we have all these damn RTCs we're fighting. Yeah. But it's good for wrestling, so I'm very happy that it actually grew wilder than I thought it would. I mean,
really?
I do. I didn't think it. Well, I think coaches took a lot of liberty with it. that they probably shouldn't have.
Well, that's, yeah.
You know,
Well, that's a
they
whole
framed
separate
the grade
podcast that
pretty
we did.
strongly.
Yeah.
But understandably, no sweat. I actually, I argue a little bit with Cody and Bill that when I was doing the RTC, I provided a lot of governance. I had to do it. When I left, Bill didn't want to mess and Cody didn't want to mess too much with governance, but we need it, right? We need to make sure the playing field is fair. And Cody has done a good job, and Bill has done a good job. I just think as our coaches get a little aggressive with RTC, we just need to kind of push the edges in and make sure we're governing it because it's a tremendous asset. It's millions of dollars into wrestling, and it can only help us if we know how to manage it.
Yeah. Well, all of us, I think, try to predict certain things like recruiting, this guy's going to be good or bad. Hey, if I teach this guy this technique. I thought when RTCs came out that the colleges would drive the RTCs. I'm like, okay, school X has a good college team, so RTC guys will want to go there. And I could not have been more wrong. Like, it's the other way now. Like, you bring in these RTC athletes, and now they recruit to that athlete. And so it's like, because that's why Oklahoma RTC brought a guy like you in. That's why Burroughs has been so valuable to Nebraska for so many years. Because you can go train with that guy, and you don't have to say, well, here's his resume. It's like JB, like you want to wrestle that guy every day, you're going to get better.
You might not want to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's been a tremendous asset for USA Wrestling, for college wrestling, high school wrestling, developmental wrestling.
Yeah.
It's been great. We need to continue to do it. And there are adversaries to RTC. Because there is some separation, right, with
haves and have-nots.
Schools.
Yeah.
I call it the small budgeted schools and the large budgeted schools. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
It's about funding. It's about money. Who has more money than, money isn't the deciding factor, but it's a huge factor.
Oh, it is. I mean, we're starting one in St. Charles, Missouri, and I'm going to be the coach there. But, we're obviously not competing with you guys, but it's to give kids, like you said, get the kids in the area a chance to train. Hopefully, we can do some things on like the Fargo level and then that level. And then you guys are like, who's that kid?
And the piece, and you said it right. And probably the biggest piece I missed, what really motivated me too in the beginning was Satia was 19 years old and won his first gold medal. And I said, Olympic gold medal, right? And I said, the Russians are winning at 18, 19, why can't we? Well, the reason we can is our developmental athletes, our high school kids can't go into the college room and train with them. But the rule, the RTC rule, gave us the vehicle to have high school kids train with college kids train with Olympic athletes in the same room at the same time. And we weren't doing that because the NCAA had those divisions in there. And RTCs, and we got it approved from the NCAA and the Olympic Committee to say, allow this to happen, and they did.
Yeah, to me, that's a huge thing. And then also, like, you see these clubs where, like, amazing guys are now coaching kids clubs and making a living off of it. Like, and I don't want to, like, omit anyone, but, like, when I was going to run Minnesota Border Brawl, we went up to Pinnacle, and you got Jared Lawrence and Brandon Paulson coaching kids. Like, most of the time, those kind of coaches you couldn't get to till you were 25 years old.
Yeah.
Now you can get to them when you're 10. I mean,
it's been great.
It's
been great.
That'll jump the curve real quick.
I remember 9 years ago when I got here walking in and seeing, I walked in the wrestling room before I even went anywhere. I pulled right into the wrestling
Shocking.
room.
Shocking, that'd be the first place you'd go.
We get in and I walk in there and there's Melvin Douglas coaching like 30 little kids. I'm like, I was blown away. I had no idea. I'm like, Melvin Douglas is coaching kids here?
We're going to be good. We'll be okay.
I'm like,
how soon can I sign those guys? What's the NLI age?
Brandon Courtney's a product of it. Brandon Courtney started in the Sunkiss Club in the AS room when he was 10. Came through with Melvin coaching him. Obviously came to Arizona State. Now he's where he's at. I mean,
national team
if
member.
You can build a cradle to grave program. That was always Art Martori's vision at Sunkiss, to have cradle to grave. And now it's been a long time and a long period, but now I think we're in a place where we can do it well.
I'm going to jump ahead because one of my questions was about Art. So sometime off air I'll tell you the story how Pritts got me the interview with Art, because that's a true classic story. But for people that don't know, Art Martori is the head of the Sunkiss Kids Wrestling Club, really one of the GOATs in wrestling. Like, anybody who's ever wrestled for the last 30 years has had Art touch that person's life, men and women, and one of the most generous people we have in our sport. I've heard from more than one reliable source that he basically saved Olympic wrestling. I guess it was 2012. And
He's certainly one of the pivotal people.
so I don't know how to really articulate this, but for any of you guys, what kind of influence does Art have on Sunkist and Arizona State on both a big picture and then on a day-to-day basis? And whoever wants to answer.
Well, I'll go first, just because I was a beneficiary of it when I came to college here at Arizona State, and had the opportunity to train with Joe Gonzalez, Tim Vanny. I call him, the way you said it, I would describe it as he's the most influential person in the sport of wrestling in the entire world that doesn't put a singlet on or coach an athlete. He's a leader, right?
Yeah.
He's a visionary. He's a CEO and president of wrestling worldwide, and he's given so many people the opportunity. And I was one of those kids, and when I graduated college coming through, I wanted to continue my dream of becoming a World Olympic champion. And, I remember walking scared as hell to walk into his office when I was 23, a semi-adult,
Paying taxes.
Starting a job, and just sitting with him and saying, okay, Zeke, here's how we're going to support you. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we'll pay you. Here's how we'll send you on trips. And I left, and I'm like, okay, this is good. This will get me started on my quest to trying to be the best in the world. And he knows the model, and he's just replicates it over and over and over, right? He ensures that there's a coaching staff, athletes to train with, obviously elite athletes in the room, and then he supports them by sending them to training and competition. It's domestic and international. So, I mean, it's a pretty simple model once you've been in it a long time, kind of seen it like you or I or all of us. But he, and along with his daughter Kim now, we had 6 women in the finals of the trials, 2 on the team, and a host of other men, and of course Jordan Burroughs, who needs no introduction, right? Who's a Sunkist kid. Art knows the model. He's legendary, and he will go down as maybe the most influential American ever in our sport now.
If you're one of the guys that saved Olympic wrestling, that alone vaults you to the top.
Yeah.
I know you guys work. I know you've worked with them. I may tell that story. We'll see. But what are your guys' impressions of Art?
He's been great, and I don't deal with him on a day-to-day, but I can feel his impact daily, and his willingness to work with our administration and work with our athletes, both college and Olympic level, and just what he does for the program, by bringing in the coaches, by bringing in there's no doubt in my mind that he made the hire of Zeke Jones.
Yeah.
It was, and
there was a committee, and then the committee said, "What do we do, Art?" Right?
Right. It's a 2-person, 48-hour committee.
Right.
That's how we plan most of our weekends. 2 people, 48 hours.
Yeah, that's it.
And again, I just seen, I see him making sure the guys have, and the girls, and everyone has the best opportunities to be successful. And again, so I said, I don't deal with him on a day-to-day, but I see his impact.
So I've been here for, a little bit less than a year, but growing up, they always had the Sunkist tournament, and I always thought that'd be something I would want to go out and compete in, and, then I started to see more and more of these Sunkist guys winning world and Olympic titles, so from the outside, there was always a real high prestige, the people that competed for Sunkist kids, we're the best of the best. And, then we get into the hiring process, and, then I meet Art, and, he was very gracious, and I was really grateful that he believed in me and gave me the opportunity. And, I spent probably a lot more time talking to Kim, and Kim was very gracious. She was trying to support me to compete from the start and motivate me, and, she let me know multiple times if I wanted to compete, that they would pay for it and they would help, any way they could help, all the way till I wrestled. She treated me with a lot of respect and, gave me a great opportunity. So, I was really grateful for that, and she made things real nice. But, yeah, we're in a great situation. I mean, we've got the best national club right in our backyard, Sunkist Kids, and it has great leadership. The trajectory's been nothing but up since it began, and I think now it's going to continue to, hit new levels, with some more opportunities that we're getting into. But Sunkist Kids, that's for ASU. I mean, that's one of our biggest selling points of the recruits, and great leadership.
Well, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, when I walked in on that first day, I was saying, I see Melvin Douglas over here. As I turn to walk out, I see the big Sunkist banner hanging up, and it has X amount of world and Olympic medals. and more than any club
Sure.
in the world, right? I believe in the world. And on the bottom it says, "We are the Dream Makers." And as I'm walking out on the wall, there was a shadow box. I'm telling you, it wasn't much bigger than your computer. A little shadow box, and there's a note from Cale Sanderson, saying, "Hey, thanks for everything. You told me from day one, we are the Dream Makers. Thanks for making it happen." And there's a little picture of Sammy Henson in there. There's a little picture of Abbas in there, And it was like all this history was in a shadow box this big, and I was just, my jaw was dropping. I'm like, we have an obligation to build this program back to something special.
Well, I've been blessed with this podcast to get to talk to so many elite people, and I enjoy it. And I don't generally get nervous, but when you got me Art, first of all, I tried to call him, and I prefer to text. So when Mahatma says text, you text, and so, I write up all these questions, and I called Kenny Monday, John Smith, all these guys to try to find some dialogue. Only my mom's a communication teacher and told me don't ever ask a yes/no question, ask open-ended questions. I got on and just froze. I asked a bunch of yes/no questions, and I'm like, well, Kenny Monday said this about you. He goes, well, that's very nice. And then I'm like, oh, John Smith said this about you. Well, John was great to work with. I'm like, this is going to be the world's shortest podcast. It's going to be 8 minutes. I'm done in 8 minutes. And I finally said to him, I go, well, Rich Benner said you tried to kill him in a dune buggy one time, or a snowmobile one time. He goes, it wasn't a snowmobile, it was a dune buggy. And then he went on for like 40 minutes. And then at the end, the funny thing is, you guys have all been on the pod and very gracious. Thank you for having me. So I said, Art, it's been great. He goes, well, David, I didn't really think I was going to enjoy this at all, but it wasn't half bad. And then just hung up. All right, folks, that was Art. So one of the things I was looking, and Leah was actually talking to you about this last night. You guys have All-Americans back at 25, 33, 57, 65, and 85, 285. And you have Norfleet, who was a 2020 All-American and a top 4 seed, who obviously did an All-American this year, but clearly has beaten guys on that level, multiple guys. And then you guys go get Kyle Parko, who frankly was I covered the Big 12s for ESPN Plus, and I'm like, somebody better get this dude because he can just wrestle from a lot of different positions and scenarios. So I look at it, basically on paper, you guys have 7 All-Americans. So it feels to me like you guys are really positioned well to be in the trophy hunt every year, that this wasn't an aberration. And then from your guys' point of view, how realistic is it, or how close, how many pieces away, if you guys can find Zahid a 6th year somehow, how close are you guys to contending for a national title?
Go ahead, Pritts. He's counting points, so.
I mean, you and me count, we do that math on the phone, yeah.
Yeah, we were 50 points back this year, right?
Yeah.
So that's basically 2 national champions.
Or
bonus points. And
or you had Parko, Norfleet All-Americans, and you need one more champ. There's your 50 points.
Right? And I was, I don't know who I was talking to. I was like, man, we got to teach these guys how to pin, because we're doing a lot of winning, but now we have to start getting pin points, And I think we had 16 points this year in bonus, 16 or 17, and we need to double that for sure. We need to double that, and that's going to happen, in those early rounds.
Yeah.
So we have to, I think, at the program, focus on pinning, and we have the athletes. I think we have the athletes in the stable to compete, but now we have to open up the spread on the bonus points.
Well, what you guys also have is, I'm from St. Louis, and I watched how Brian Smith built Missouri, and they went from, frankly, being terrible to having a bunch of guys qualify to a bunch of guys going 1 and 2, and then a bunch of guys going 2 and 2. And then they got their guy. They got Askren. And once you get one guy that believes in it, then that's how it brings other guys. You guys have this unique team where you got a bunch of guys. You don't have a bunch of 2 and 2 guys. You got a bunch of All-Americans, and you got a couple holes where you're not scoring team points right now. But that's actually better. Like if you got a bunch of guys that scored 6 points, it's hard to get them all to jump to 14. If you got 3 holes, you're like, yeah, but we recruited this guy. Like, you didn't score points at 41 or 49. Now Parko comes in, and he scored 12 and a half points or whatever it was this year. That's a great plug and play for you guys. And I was lucky enough, thanks to you guys, to come out when you guys dueled Penn State out here. I'm so mixed up on the years now. I think it was like a year and a half ago, maybe?
2, yeah.
2 years,
2 seasons ago.
2 seasons ago. And the roof blew off that place. And when we were walking and talking, how realistic is it that you guys can get another dual meet out? Like, because that was good for obviously it was good for Arizona State wrestling. That'd be the understatement of the podcast. But that was good for wrestling. Period. West Coast. It wasn't great for Penn State, but it was kind of good for everybody else in wrestling. How is it realistic is that you guys can get something like that to happen again, where you get a top flight program out of here?
Well, maybe to the first start of your question, I think we left some points off the board for sure. Cordell certainly, Anthony certainly, if we pick up 10 to 15 each there, more bonus points, or bringing in a top recruit that can score, we can close that gap. So that makes us feel strong. If we can do that, I'd like to think that we would attract teams that want to wrestle us. I would say the most difficult thing we have right now is the ability to get teams to wrestle us. And I'm being a little more vocal about it now because being silent hasn't worked.
Definition of insanity, right?
But I'll be careful and I'll be respectful. We're having a hard time getting the best teams to wrestle us because, obviously the Big Ten, they have a tough schedule, so the best teams, they don't want another Big Ten team. We're like a Big Ten team, a good one, right? So why do they want to wrestle? Why does Iowa want to wrestle Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin, and then us? They don't want to add another one. And then obviously the weaker schools are like, we don't want to wrestle you because we don't want to, get beat up. So
you guys are stuck in purgatory.
We're stuck in the worst spot possible. So we've got to do something nationally about scheduling. I've had the discussion with Mike Moyer. With these mega conferences, which are good, they're difficult because now I got to wrestle 10 schools in my conference. Well, that's now limited to the Big 12. They have to wrestle so many in their own conference that makes it harder for them to wrestle us. So the mega conferences make it harder on us because they got to wrestle each other first. So scheduling is difficult, but I do think, if you want to wrestle us. Come on out, you enjoy the desert. It's nice out, and we'll certainly come back to you. And Lee and I have the anywhere, any place, anytime, and we actually will do that.
Yeah.
Because we have to. We're not in the Big Ten, so we have to wrestle anywhere, any place, anytime, because we need that schedule. So we wrestled all over the place. I can tell you numerous things. Zeke wrestled number 1, number 2, and the number 3 ranked guy in America in his first 3 matches of the year because
I remember that.
And Tanner Hall did too.
Yeah.
Because we were able to. It just fell that way.
One was the hammer and one was the nail in that scenario.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But
that's the difference between being ranked 1st and 6th.
Exactly. But I would say when you talk about can you bring a Penn State out, can we do it again? That was the perfect storm. They hadn't lost in 5 years. Who doesn't want to go see a team that hasn't lost in 5 years against a team that was right there on the cusp ourselves? Our administration is all about it. They're after me to find a team that will come do that, Oklahoma State or a Penn State, and we would do it in a second. The problem is they're not so eager to want to do it with us.
I get
because
it.
they have issues. I'm not saying because they're scared. They're not.
No,
they're great
no.
teams. They have scheduling issues that make it very difficult to wrestle us. So something's got to give if you want the West to not just survive but to thrive.
Yeah.
And right now we're going through, and it's right now just our senior women's administrators in the Pac-12 met, and now the associate commissioners have met, and now the presidents will meet about expanding the Pac-12 wrestling conference beyond just one, because that's what we've been allowed to add is when we drop below the AQ qualifier of 6. So if you drop to 5 teams, we could only add to 6. And that's been their policy forever. They just now are changing the policy. We can add 8, 10, 12 teams. We're in their final approval in the next few weeks. When that hits, we'll be able to go out and solicit multiple teams for the conference.
Why don't you guys just add the whole Big 12 and have a super conference?
I'd love it, but what's the name of it going to be?
Pac Big 12?
Pac Big 12? I'd be okay with
Big
that.
Pac 12 something.
I think the one thing is we can't. I am the biggest, I think, barrier on the coaches' calls to say I think we can't lose the Pac-12 conference because what if USC wanted to add 20 years from now or UCLA? Well, there's no Pac-12 conference, so why have it? If there's any team in the West that wants to add, we would immediately say, come join the Pac-12. We can add you. But if we don't have the Pac-12,
you got to give them somewhere to go.
Well, gosh, we got to go to the Big 12. It's too far away. Let's not add wrestling. So we need to become the custodians of the Pac-12 Wrestling Conference and save it and grow it. And I think wrestling in the West will grow. And the last thing, I know I've rambled on.
No.
Just the last statement is, Anthony Holman, who's the championship director for the NCAA tournament, he looks at the West Coast not as a dying area, but the potential to grow.
Yeah.
College wrestling. The NCAA is looking at the West as a potential. If we can make the West like the East, think of how great wrestling could be.
Well,
so they're not looking at this, how do we survive? They want it to grow. They want to figure it out. So that's good.
Well, there's a ton of good high school wrestling out on the West Coast.
That's right.
It may not all be in Arizona, but up and down the coast. So one thing to circle back, we talk about counting points. This is just my opinion, but I think next year it's going to be so much harder because everybody's back and the Ivies are back, and then you bring in all these recruits. I don't think the winning team will score as many points as they did this year because it's going to be so spread out. I mean, I think 110, 120 points will probably win it next year.
Next year's probably going to be the toughest NCAA tournament in history.
Yeah.
In the history.
So, I mean, maybe 100 wins it. So maybe you don't have to make up as much math as you think you do, Pritts. Call me, we'll do the abacus. We'll figure it out for you.
I think, too, there's definitely a mentality change, too, after last year, because there's two different ways. You're either the farmer or you're the hunter. The farmer plants and he waits and waits and waits. But I think now we're in a position where we're the hunter. Last year we were talking about trophies all season. We were talking about it, trophy. We weren't scared to talk about it. We talked about it for long enough till it became, we better win a trophy.
Speak it into existence,
Calculating the points, yelling to get major decisions. So, I think now we're the hunter, but I also think they believe in our vision. And we had, pretty young mixed group last year, and it was a difficult year with COVID. And I think the first step is we got to be crystal clear on what it is we're trying to accomplish, and it's crystal clear. We're trying to be national champions, and if we settle for a trophy, that's kind of the mentality now, right? You make it to the national finals, you don't win next year. You're expecting to be in the finals and win.
Minimum, yeah.
And I think it says a lot to what these guys have done, in 6 years, to get the program all the way to a position now where people are expecting trophies out of this team and this coaching staff. And I think a big part too, we talked about it before, I think crystal clear, I think the gratitude part's important, but we have transparency and leadership all the way from the top down. I've been on 2 national championship teams, and I've coached on 1 national championship team, and nothing was different. I mean, in terms of having a plan, being organized, being carefully planned, having the athletic department, the associate athletic department, the NLWC here, the Sunkiss kids, we have all the pieces, we have all the talent, we have the guys that had the performances. We have, I think, probably 1, 2, or 3 recruiting class in the country coming in behind our guys, and we have very successful freestyle guys training at our local RTC. So we have all the tools in position to win now. But like these guys said, it'll be a hard tournament, and I mean, crap, those guys did a lot of work to get where they're at now. They got another 700 workouts until next year. So
yeah,
I think the execution will be the key because, I mean, this guy's great with the details, and Lee's had all the experience, and he's been around a lot of those programs that you mentioned. He's been around Missouri, he's been around NC State. And those programs, they did it from the bottom all the way up. Now, same thing, he's at ASU bottom all the way back up. So it's just sticking to our plan.
Yeah.
But more importantly is now I feel like we're the hunter. It's different.
Well, I had a guy in my business life, we were talking about wrestling. He didn't know anything about wrestling, but he was asking me about recruiting. And he simplified something just so quintessentially. He goes, well, you're recruiting, you're selling results or you're selling hope.
Yeah.
And I thought about it, I was like, yeah, you've either done it or you're saying we're going to do it. And it's a lot easier to say we've done it. Because the other, you're kind of making promises and like, hey, be the first over here. You don't need to go somewhere where they've done it a bunch of times. So when you guys, now that this has happened, you have had national champions, you have people on the Olympic team, and now you have the team trophy, which is another big piece to it. It's a lot easier to be on that side of the coin than the other side of the coin.
Absolutely.
Well, it was, 6 years ago when, I got to ASU and Lee and I jumped in the car and airplane and, you know, went to
the garage.
The team was 65th in the country with an NCAA qualifier wild card.
Yeah.
And that's when I got there, where we were at, or close to that, and that's what we were selling, hope.
You were full on hope selling.
Thank the Lord. You know, that's what
People got to believe.
Well, and that's what I sold them on, is be the first believers. You know, be the first people to believe that you could do this. And Anthony and Zahid, they built Bosco by themselves.
Yeah.
And they were the first believers. They believed that we could do something special at ASU. And, you know, who would have thought at that 6 years ago, Penn State had won their 4th national title. We had one qualifier wild card. You know, who would have thought 5 years later we would have beat them? You know, after they're on their 8th national title.
Yeah.
So it was work by Tanner Hall and Zahid and Shields and Tanner, Anthony and that crew that ultimately gave us the opportunity to now say we got results. Look.
Yeah, for sure. And those guys will always be special in your program's history because, you know, like I think you know this story that Ben Askren was deciding between Mizzou and another school, and the guy said, "You'll never win at Mizzou. They've never won." That's the perfect mentality. The guy that goes, "I'm going to go there and win just to prove you wrong," and so.
Yeah, that guy helped us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was lucky enough to be at the trials and call a few matches, but the two big off the mat stories were the 97 kilo situation, but the other one that happened before that was Soriano. Mm-hmm. So, you know, what happened? How did the COVID test happen? Is there any appeal? Can you get a reversal? Is there a way to say it was a false positive? What's
Yeah.
Rather than speculate, I figured I would just ask.
I can tell you what I know. So we all had to test prior to leaving our cities to go to the Olympic trials. 72 hours, right? You have to test 72 hours prior to getting on the air, before getting to the location. And Nick tested negative on Sunday, which was great. And then we left on Tuesday, and then that's when he had tested positive Tuesday night. And all the athletes, we went over on Tuesday and tested, and he was positive. And then I spent my whole night on the phone working with USA Wrestling. They were good. They said, they said if you test positive, you have to test negative a second time, a negative a third time.
To overrule the positive
to
test.
To be clear, right.
So two negatives equal one positive.
You get 3 tests. And if you test positive the first time, if you test negative twice, you're clear. But if you test positive again...
So it's 2 out of 3.
Yeah, basically. 2 out of 3, either direction.
Simplify it for us.
and he was positive again, which was unfortunate. I mean, and then USA Wrestling asked us if we wanted to appeal immediately, and there wasn't much to appeal on. But I don't think it's over. I have to say I'm not on the inside of the decision. That's what's going on now. But I'm sure his family is looking at every avenue.
Yeah, I would think they would, and he came on, when I first moved my podcast to USA Wrestling, you helped me get Mark, Zahid, and Nick on. That was the first one. And I've never talked to Soriano. And he doesn't do a whole lot of interviews, so, everything you hear about him is mostly hearsay. And I talked to Lee pretty regularly, and I had talked to Junior, and they were just talking about his training and his methodology and his mindset. And, he kept using the word purpose, when, everything has a purpose, like with like gratitude, like there's these things that are these themes in these people's lives that are winners. And I guess when you get a chance to interview somebody, generally you like them, they're nice people. But I think he could have been the biggest jerk in the world, and I still would have been like, man, that sucks that he didn't get a chance to wrestle, and I don't know what the fair solution is, but it was just super unfortunate.
It's heartbreaking. It's terrible. That just was crushing.
Nick, too, I've known Nick for, over a decade. And
you guys are Jersey guys, right?
Actually, the first time we had met, in wrestling scene was at ASU. At a camp,
okay.
14.
It's like Kuna Matata. It all comes back together.
Nothing has changed with Soriano. This guy is the hardest worker I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah, he's one of the hardest workers I've ever seen.
That's coming from him.
Yeah, this guy, you have to kick him out of the wrestling room, or he won't stop working out. And it's like a debt. I'm sure for him, it's almost like feeling a debt, because he put an exorbitant amount of time and energy 24/7, before practice, after practice, before he eats, after he eats. He used his downtime perfectly. And he beat the best guys in the world. He proved to Team USA that he can compete with the guys that are overseas. He beat the number 1 guy. He lost to the number 2 guy in the finals. He won an international tournament. So he hit all these markers. He was in position to make the world team, and it's sad. I wish there was a different process for this type of situation, but this is the first time there's ever been a COVID trials, so obviously it's out of our control, but I believe that he was the best guy.
Well, I think you'd rather see him get pinned or get even a terrible call, something, than just you don't get to go out there and strap it on. Well, it's basically a different version of your story. You strapped it on and you wrestled, and that's 10 times, it's 100 times better than not getting to wrestle.
That's right.
I mean, it's a different version of it, but it's kind of the same thing. So a couple years ago, I got a chance to interview Jordan Burroughs and Mark Manning together. And the highlight for me was watching those guys talk about each other when they're there together. So I'm going to put you guys on the spot a little bit, okay? So when you came to Arizona State, this guy was the only guy there, and he had a gas card, and I don't know if you did when you first got here. No, I'm talking about driving around and seeing all these.
Have a gas card? No. I'd say, let me use that thing.
And I know you guys have been ride or die ever since. So, from your position as the head coach, what kind of impact has Lee had on the program?
Well, he's been the glue of the program, right? He kept everything together when we first got here. Lee and I joke, when I first got here, we didn't know each other, right?
Yeah.
So I said, hey, let's do this thing for a while, go on the road together, go recruiting, and let's see how we mesh. And he was like, yeah, that's good. That was more than fair. And I was trying to put a staff together at the time, and
So you were literally making a decision,
we were going to go on the road together and hang out.
and you were going to decide whether you're going to keep him.
We were deciding whether we were going to be together.
Well, actually, you were deciding.
Yeah.
It's just not the same vote.
Different percentage. But we went on the road, and first off, our personalities hit. It was great. We get along great. We talk the same language. We have a similar view, and in a lot of things. But obviously, he brings a skill set that I didn't have. I at the time, I joked, I can tell you where all the Russians and the Bulgarians were because I was coaching the national team, but I had no idea where the high school kids were.
I actually remember you telling me. Yeah.
Didn't know who they were. Lee knew every kid in high school coach under a rock. And so what was great was right on that first 4 to 6 weeks, we had the number 1 recruiting class. That Tanner, Anthony and Zeke committed first, then Tanner committed, then Maruka committed, then Shields committed. And it was over. It was a number.
And Kate Olivas was in that class or right around that time too, right?
Well, not that class, but he was 2
a year
years
or
younger.
two later.
Yeah.
But, yes.
Yeah.
But it was at that point we got to know each other. Relationship was great, and we crushed it in recruiting. I'm like, yeah, you're hired.
Because it's kind of important.
It was everything.
Yeah.
It was everything because I felt if you can't get out of the gate right away with a new head coach, it takes him, he doesn't get any recruits right away, that's a killer. But if you get the number 1 recruit in the country in 4 weeks, you're golden. And that's what happened. We got Anthony and Zahid. 3 weeks later it was Tanner. 3 weeks later it was Maruka. 3 weeks later it was Shields. And it was a lock. It was done. And then that brought Pendleton. And Chris was actually somewhere earlier in that. Then it became Jordan Oliver. And then, it was off and running.
Yeah.
Then it was just, they were juniors in high school. So it didn't mean they were wrestling next week for us. We had to wait 3 years to get them in the lineup.
Yeah.
But by then we were off and running.
But it gives
That's
you
how him and I got to.
It gives you street cred when you're recruiting too.
Well, it got us in all the homes of other people.
Well, no, when we jumped, we got Duran, Wynn, and in junior, like I told my dad, I go, there's no kid in the country that's going to call me and say, well, I'm not, Merrimack, I'm too good to go to Merrimack. I'm like, well, you're not better than that guy, and he's coming.
Right.
And it just changes the conversation. Like, it's like your trump card,
Lee worked, although I went to ASU too, I think the other big thing, I learned when I went to University of Pennsylvania, it's always good to keep somebody from the staff if you can, because the transition's much, much smoother.
Continuity, right?
Yes, and that, anybody who's coached any period of time knows and your athletic directors will tell you that. Every place I've ever been, hey, if you can keep one, it's always kind of smart.
They know where the potholes are.
They do. He knew where they all were. It was perfect. I mean, he already had a perfect view of where, the administration was, the university. I'd been on campus, but it'd been a long time. I mean, I hadn't been back in 16 years since I was the assistant coach in the 90s. So he made the transition smooth and easy, and wheeled me around in a wheelchair because I had surgery that
knee surgery.
That's right. That is right.
And they weren't going to let him fly.
They weren't going to let me fly.
Because of blood clotting and all this, and he's like, no, you guys don't understand. We have to go on the road.
Yeah.
And so they said, okay, if you're going, you have to inject yourself.
I had to stick needles in my stomach every flight, before, during, and after flights.
So we're in the airport. Like, and he's like,
they thought you were a type 1 diabetic?
I mean, we just spent a couple weeks into this deal together.
Hey, he's sitting down on his bag in the wall, and all of a sudden he's pulling this stuff out, and he's like, bang.
I didn't know how to put a needle in. I'm like stabbing myself.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, he's a professional.
He pushed me through the airports in these wheelchairs. I had my knee reconstructed. It was the perfect time because obviously there was a transitional year. Not to say the kids that were in the program were great. They just weren't quite at the level that we were trying to aspire to be, and we needed a recruit.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Wooden said, you can't go for 3 weeks. I said, that's not an option.
How are we doing this? Just tell me how we're doing it.
Yeah. Give me a message. I said, well, you got to stick yourself with needles 3 times a day. I said, no problem.
Only 3 times?
Don't give me the big gauge ones. Those little ones.
As long as I get this pen that signs people, it goes with it.
And Lee was great, man. He freaking took me everywhere, and he knew where to go and how to, and he knew what to say. I hadn't been in a home in a while.
Yeah, that helps.
Language change, and I didn't, social media when I coached the national team, you didn't need social media. I learned, right away, you got to get into social media and understand how that works with kids, so you can, nudge them the direction you want them to go. So he knew all that stuff. I just didn't know, and so it was seamless.
That's
he
awesome.
was selling me, and I was selling him.
Yeah, that's the way it works. So, Pritts, you told me from Jump Street when it was a possibility that Frank was coming out there, like you called me, and you're like, hey, because I know he's been on the pot, and so I know how much you wanted to work with him. You talked a little bit about his work ethic, about the training and everything else, but I know you guys are friends, and when you first come out here, these become your friends because you don't know anybody else. What kind of impact has he had on your life?
Well, he's been great. Yeah, he comes over here, brings a family over. It was great because, as he mentioned earlier, apparently I'm dying. I've been coaching forever. But,
you got your ARP card, your wheelchair, you got Zeke's wheelchair, you're on your way out. Now you get a team trophy, it's downhill.
It's great. He came in, and, again, he works out 16 times a day. And
you do too.
And I was slowing down tremendously, and it's been great. As soon as he got here, he tried to treat me like I was 25 again, like, hey, come on over, we got to hit the foothills. And I don't like to run the foothills. And he thinks I love to run the foothills because he has me over every day, run the foothills.
I know you beat him in the underwater swimming medicine ball thing. Like I saw that on social.
No, we turned his living room, we put wrestling mats down in his living room, and it's just been great because his energy is so infectious to the whole team, but also to the staff, and you can see it's to our families, to my kids. My kids get around him. It's just, and it's just to everyone. His personality is infectious. And
you seem like when we talk, you seem like you're having more fun.
Oh.
I mean, I know winning has a lot to do with that, clearly.
Clearly. It's the people you're doing it with.
Yeah, for sure.
I knew Mark Perry for a long time.
Yeah.
But the most I knew of him is talking to him a couple times in the locker room after we're warming guys up at a tournament.
Yeah.
And we don't know each other, and
sure.
So it was great. Right away we hit it off, and when Zeke called me and said, "Hey, what do you think about this guy? What do you think about that? What do you think about Perry?" I said, "Oh, he's great. I've known him forever. What do you think about Frank?" I said, "I don't really know him that well, but And then I called him up, or he called me. I can't remember. Zeke hooked us up, and we started talking, and I think we hit it off pretty good right away. And and then when he got here, I just the work ethic, it motivated me, and I'm into work ethic.
No, you need that because you're kind of lazy.
But it is. It's it's invigorating when you get with somebody else, you know, and Zeke's a worker, and he's a worker, and Perry's a worker, and that's what's really great about this staff is everyone's a worker, and Zeke allows us to work, you know. Zeke allows us to coach, and I think that's
how you level up, is being around people that want to level up.
What's critical in how we're making jumps as a program right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, obviously, you know, we've talked about that. You've been learning from these guys, but you obviously brought a lot to the table, or they don't bring you here. Like you talked about Sunkiss being elite, Arizona State was on the cusp of being elite, and they chose you, and there's a lot of people to choose. So what's it been like having Zeke as a mentor? I'm sure, you know, obviously you love it here, but one day your aspirations, I'm sure, be a head coach. You know, what's it been like to pick a guy's brain who, and he'll never say this, but I told everybody I'm coming out here, like, this guy won the most technical wrestler in the world award, and we have fewer guys have won that than have won Olympic gold medals. You know, so I mean, like, you talk about Art Martori being the guy that nobody talks about. That's the award nobody talks about if you could pick anything in the world. But what's that been like for you?
It's been real, you know, easy for me. It's been real good transition. You know, the biggest thing is communication, you know, and Zeke's over communicated everything from the beginning, you know, and that's a big thing with me. You know, I just want to know what my expectations are, you know, what are my areas of responsibility, and then, you know, have this guy help bring me up to speed with some of the, you know, my areas of responsibility, you know, and then take it and run. And like he said, he's given us all separate areas to manage, you know, and he's helped get me started, and he's helped me a lot with getting started in those areas too. But it's really good when you know exactly what you're supposed to do. You know, I think that's really important anywhere. It sounds real simple, but role clarity, you know, and we always know who's supposed to do what, who's supposed to teach this, who's responsible for this. So for me, that's been extremely refreshing, you know, knowing what I'm supposed to do, and then having people around me that have the experience to get me started and, you know, have some grace since I'm kind of new and getting back into it, you know, and they definitely had some grace on me, you know, because coming right from hardcore competing into training, you know, I definitely needed to kind of process things a little bit differently, and they were both really helpful with that. But, you know, again, just commenting on the energy, you know, I'm a big energy guy.
Yeah.
I like things to be positive and, you know, real enthusiastic, and these guys are high energy, you know, high energy, and it works really well with me because, you know, I think we all have that mentality and work ethic, like you were saying. So, you know, it's been fun. You know, it's been fun, and getting to know them as people too. You know, outside of the wrestling, yeah, the wrestling's good. You know, we're all winners. We can figure that stuff out. But with my kids, you know, Lee's been great with the kids. Zeke's been great with the kids, and you know, for me, I could just sit back now and relax. My kids are surrounded by great role models. You know, with these coaches, with Coach Perry, with the Sunkiss athletes, the kids on the team, you know, so I'd say this is the most happy I've ever been in my whole life.
That's
I've
awesome.
always wanted to come out to the West Coast, and, you know, when I plan things 10 years in advance and I have these dreams or hopes, you know, I hope that I would end up on the West Coast, and more specifically, I hope that I end up here. You know, I didn't know how. I had no idea how. You know, I had small things I did, you know, visualization and just staying in the right network with the right relationships, but fast forward, we're here now. We just went through our first year. You know, it really couldn't be any better. So, you know, I guess one word is gratitude. You know, I'm just grateful that it happened, but more grateful that, you know, it's happening the way it is, because now I'm learning more, and I think I'll be a better coach being around these guys. You know, they're basically two head coaches. You know, so I'm going to be able to level up as a coach really fast and just continue to learn.
It's awesome. Well, for me, my evolution, when we first did these interviews, I think Pritts was literally my first guest and was on the phone, and we just had to agree to, like, not use some of the terms and language we use off the air, but it was a phone call, and then it's evolved into Zoom calls, and now we're lucky enough to have somebody like Austin shooting this live for us. But my favorite interviews are just conversations, like we're all sitting around, there's a fight on or a wrestling meet on in the background, but everybody just kind of talking. And for me, that's how this has felt for the last hour. I know, obviously, I'm asking some questions. I always tell people, I just try to ask the questions that all my buddies want to know. You know, like if we're all like if they could sit in and listen, like ask him that, ask him that. So it's been awesome. I appreciate you guys inviting my family and I out here for the weekend. We're really looking forward to and enjoying all the activities. But you know, we were looking forward to this so much, and I appreciate you setting it up. And
You're looking forward to sitting at the pool too, right?
I lost some weight. I might be okay. No, they told me the golf course is loaded. Plus, I'm
It's full.
left-handed, short, and a dislocated elbow. So that makes me like a 40 handicap.
Yeah.
So, but I just
It's a
appreciate.
good time to come. It's
Yeah.
This is a great time in Arizona State's wrestling history. You've got 6 decades of wrestlers that will be here. Tom Dubin wrestled in 1958 here. He'll be at the banquet tonight.
Wow.
Buzz Hayes and Glenn McMinn were our first All-Americans in 63 and I want to say 62, 63, 63. Maybe you'd know better than me. Your dad would know. But
Yeah.
it's a time to celebrate the program for an evening, to celebrate the kids that have come through it. And, you know, obviously a round of golf the following day, which will be a fun activity for everybody to spend time together and just celebrate the weekend of Sun Devil Wrestling.
Yeah, well, this has been a unique podcast for me. Most of them are never in person. And the 2 greatest mentors in my life are my dad in wrestling and my mom in communication. So when this is over, I'm going to find out real shortly if I passed or failed.
You're tough as crazy.
But I want to thank you guys just from the bottom of my heart for doing this, and best of luck.
Yeah, thanks.
We appreciate you. Thank you.